right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the 36th New Orleans Film Festival. My name is Zoe. I'm the venue manager here at the conference venue. Before we begin, just a few notes from me. If you could please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices, that would be great. Should you need any assistance during or after the event, please find me in the lobby and I'll do my best to help. In the unlikely event of an emergency, please exit the building the way you came in or through the double doors at the other end as quickly and calmly as possible. We would like to take this time to thank our circle level members, grantors, and sponsors involved in this year's production. Check out our website or download the New Orleans Film Society app to learn more about screenings, our free filmmaker conference panels, live podcasts, and more. And now we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fluent in Film. My name is Jillian, and I'm the conference coordinator. And out of all the panels and workshops, I feel like this is the most my baby. English is not my first language. And I really found myself thinking a lot about how that shows up in a lot of different ways in day-to-day life, even just like currently my life primarily exists in English, which, like I said, is not my first language. And so I just thought it would be really interesting to have a conversation with a lot of different people who are in similar situations, even down to the fact that we're having this panel in English and for none of us, that is our first language. So I would love to start by having all of y'all introduce yourselves, say which languages you speak, and also talk a little bit about your film that is in the festival this year, because you all have films in the festival.
My name is Mealla. I'm a Bolivian-American filmmaker, so I grew up in Bolivia. I speak Spanish and English, and I was running late here because my screening just happened for my short film, Juana Pelos.
My name is Hansel Porras Garcia. I'm a Cuban filmmaker currently based in Miami, and I have a film playing tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Britannia Theater Canal Place 2.
It's called Tropical Park.
Tropical Park, actually. Yeah, that's that.
Hi, I'm Fran Zayas. I'm a Puerto Rican filmmaker. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I'm currently based in Brooklyn. I speak Spanish and English, and a little unofficial language called Spanglish. And I have a short film called Entre Tormentas, In Between Storms, that's playing today at 5 p.m. on the short film block at Britannia at Canal Place. Yes.
Hello, I am Marion Hoang Hill, which is French, Vietnamese, and English. English of Britain rather than American. And I have a film playing tomorrow, which I co-wrote and produced, named Amongst the Disquiet, which is about a Vietnamese family in New Orleans. And I've made work in both French and Vietnamese and English, I guess.
I didn't mention this before, but like Fran, I am born and raised in Puerto Rico. I think I actually want to start with something that came up in our pre-panel discussion, which I hadn't really thought about asking, but it was really interesting to see that we all had such different answers to this question. And that is just, how and when did you start learning English?
So I was actually born in Florida. So I moved to Bolivia when I was 3. So my first few words were very Spanglish. My parents would speak Spanish at home. I was in a little bit of a daycare. And then I moved back to the US to go to college in Austin, Texas when I was 18. So throughout the middle school was a little bit bilingual, they would like to claim. My parents and my siblings also speak English a little bit, so we spoke a little bit of both growing up, but I was primarily living in Bolivia, which is Spanish speaking.
Well, in Cuba, in the primary school, we used to take English classes, and I always loved English. But we would learn like one word here, one word there, like the colors, the numbers, so I thought I knew English back then in Cuba when I was living in Cuba, but it was really when I moved to Miami when I was 20 years old that I understood that everything I have learned before it was just words. I needed the connections now and all the grammatical stuff and all that. And I always say I started learning English when I came to this country when I was 20 years old.
Growing up in Puerto Rico, going to school, we have we speak Spanish there. So, but like the textbooks in the school were all English, and you're a kid, so you just accept what's presented in front of you. You're just like, oh, this is normal. And as time went by, one day it's just like I just knew, like I was telling you, I was in my grandfather used to work for Pfizer, like selling like medicine to doctors and stuff. He sold a lot of Viagra, and so he brought us on one of his business trips to a hotel in Puerto Rico, near the capital in San Juan, and there were a lot of English speakers there. And I was like 8 at the time, and I started speaking to this other kid in English, who's American, and was fluent, and I spoke to him like pretty easily. And then my grandparents were like, "You speak English?" Like, so yeah, it just happened like that.
I grew up speaking English with my dad and French with my mom, and her whole side of the family speaks no English, and we would spend summers with them and in France. So I kind of had two worlds that were in different languages. And then I didn't really start learning Vietnamese. That was kind of an adult choice that I made, which is different from a lot of Vietnamese people who grew up with their parents speaking Vietnamese to them. So I'm a little different in that way.
It's also so different to learn a language as an adult. So much harder. My story is really similar to Fran's, and I didn't realize until probably a few years ago how weird it is that we have those textbooks in English and yet we're getting taught everything in Spanish. It's very confusing. Let's kind of get into like sort of a little bit deeper into it. How do the languages that you speak influence your identity as a storyteller? How do you feel like that influences you as a creative? Anyone can start.
I can start. So Spanish is my first language, and it's the language that speak most of my family. So it's not, I don't know if it's an influence, but it's my day life, at least with my family. And there is something really funny, for example, with my dad, when we came to this country, that was 11 years ago, he never learned how to speak English. However, he managed to become a manager at a company and live in Miami as normal, but he doesn't speak English. So to me, that's really funny how you can make a living here in the United States without speaking the language. And it's really, in my work, I speak English, but I don't feel that's my language, and all my friends and all my family, everybody speaks Spanish in Miami. So I don't really feel it's a choice or an influence. Like, it's just how it's natural to me,
I'll say that I feel like I have an easier time describing an emotional experience in Spanish. We have more words for it, I like saying that I like suffering in Spanish. It's more satisfying. It's easier to get it out of the system. I was thinking about this after our conversation, because even as I was walking, with my AirPods on, an Alejandro Sanz song came on, one of the latest ones, Vino de tu boca, and it's casually saying, it's not that that I can't live without you, it's just that I don't want to live without you. And then afterwards he's like, I don't want to drink wine unless it's from your mouth. That's just as casually, and I was like, oh my God, I love this, that we talk like this, I love it, So I think that talking that way, communicating, our perils, grief, passion, anger, it's all more satisfying in Spanish than it is in English. Even saying no, no ending in oo in English, in Spanish it's no, you can drag it on forever, It doesn't end.
Yeah, extremely relatable. I just the gamma of curse words in Spanish are just the possibilities of self-expression are big. I think for me, Spanish is sort of like like the essence, like the inner person inside of me. Whereas I studied, I did a literature degree in college, like in English. So I'm a better writer in English than I am in Spanish a lot of the time, because I just have more experience in it, writing essays and the MLA format and all that stuff. And also for scripts, like most of the readers for grants and stuff are all English. So like it's like outwardly, English is comfortable in terms of form, but for self-expression of like the inner person, it's I relate it more to Spanish.
I actually would love to make a film in Spanish for exactly that reason, because I think we were talking about Vicky Cristina Barcelona just a few moments ago, and like those argument scenes between Javier and Penelope are like the most passion I've experienced in a film.
And you've been learning Spanish, right?
Yeah, well, I've learned Spanish since I was young, so, but later we can talk about how I actually love to direct actors whose language I don't speak. And that's actually been most of my experience. Like, I haven't written in Vietnamese, but I've worked with bilingual actors, which allows me to give them direction in English, and they can take it for themselves, which, especially when you're working with newer actors or people who haven't acted before, really gives them agency over how they express themselves. And that was powerful. But I will say about Vietnamese, it's the opposite of Spanish. We have very little to work with, but on the other hand, it's an extremely poetic language. It's not about how you say things, it's really about the kinds of, it's hard to explain, but, and I can't even say I understand that much, but it doesn't translate very well at all. So that's something that, I've made English subtitled Vietnamese films where when Vietnamese people watch it, they're having a completely different experience than English speaking people.
How do you feel that French comes into it for you?
I think in French when I'm in France, and I dream in French when I'm in France, but writing doesn't come to me in French ever. So that's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
That's really interesting. And a perfect segue into my next question, which was going to be, how do you actually choose the language that you're writing in? And is it even an intentional choice, right? Maybe the emotions are just coming up in one language and you just have to put them down in that language. Or are you consciously making a choice to write in one language or another?
Not me. Like, everything to me is just Spanish. It's my language. Like, I don't make a choice. I think the language shows me. And yeah, I don't even think about it. Like, all my stories comes always in Spanish, and it's my plan to continue making stories in Spanish. And even when I think on writing something in English, Spanish always comes first. Yeah. Not a choice.
Sure. It comes pretty immediate. Because it just starts with where am I shooting this, what story it is, since I was raised in Puerto Rico and now I'm based in the U.S. in Brooklyn. For me it's like, do I shoot this in Puerto Rico or do I shoot this like in an Airbnb in upstate New York? So it comes down to that. Yeah, it's pretty immediate, and then depending on the story, sometimes I'm like, is it better to shoot this in English for you know, and all of that, all of what that entails, like the audience and stuff, or is it better to shoot this in Spanish? Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's
All right.
great.
I write a lot of my dialogue is bilingual. I think that a few years ago I was like, there's an audience for that here, fuck it, you know? And I just kind of started writing bilingual and committing to that for my characters are all speak Spanglish. I did like a couple years ago, I started writing a coming of age feature that I was trying to get financing for. It's based in Bolivia. It's two best friends who are trying to raise money to go to Peru for New Year and like get fake IDs and have a job. And I wrote that one in English. It's like, you know, kind of based on like my lived experience. And it was so hard to write it in English. Like the dialogue, you know, I was like, oh man, there's no way of saying this, you know? Or even like teasing each other, you know? I think that's also a cultural thing where I'm like, as I'm writing it in English, I was like, this character is an asshole in English, you know? And in Spanish, he's just funny, you know? Like in Spanish, he's just kind of teasing. He's having a good time, but nobody minds, you know? And I was like, in English, you kind of mind this character, you know? So it's just one of those experiences where it lives, I'm trying to get funding for it, so living here, it's in English, but yeah, the dialogue flows a lot better in Spanish.
I think that in itself, though, is a really cool thing about the art form of film, is to be hearing tone, or hearing how someone's expressing themselves and not know what they're saying, and then you have what you understand about what they're saying is written for you. And like, so your brain is processing those two things at once and trying to like make sense of what you're reading with how you're hearing it. And I think that's something that I've found more recently is fun to use and to like lean into. So that maybe people are questioning like, okay, well here's the translation, but that's not what this person seems to be experiencing. And then choosing moments where you don't even subtitle because, you know, you want the audience to just feel what this person is feeling, and it doesn't really matter what they're saying.
Yeah, the emotions just won't translate. Maria, you started kind of speaking to this a little bit in this previous question, but I also think a lot about language really being a political tool, and especially right now where it is even threatening to like speak Spanish or just speak a language that isn't English. And so when you, for all of you, not just you, but when you are making work, have you felt that pressure to write in a language that feels more marketable, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I think that one of with my last two shorts specifically, a question that I get, which is always kind of catches me off guard, is like, where is this based? You know, they're like, where do people talk like this? Juana Pelos, which we just screened before, in the school, like everybody's bilingual, you know? And for me, I'm like, anywhere USA, man, you know? Like there's Latin communities everywhere in this country, and they speak Spanish in those schools, you know? I speak Spanish, we find each other in the film community, and we speak Spanish to each other, you know? So that's how it's come up for me, you know, where I'm like, we are here, you know, in every city of this country.
I kind of feel that, like, I'm here, and I don't really care where the politics are. Like, I feel like we have to own ourselves and live our full experiences, and I'm trying to do that also with the language I speak. So I don't really care. Like, at the end of the day, I feel communication, it doesn't matter in what language and what box comes. The only thing that matters is that you can communicate, you know, and that you can express and understand what other people are trying to express to you. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers.
Yes. Yeah, it's a bit of a tug of war. I have so I'm in development of feature film based in Puerto Rico, and well, there's a lot of it has to do with gentrification and living in the mountains there and all that stuff. So like language is extremely important, And I've gotten like, like resistance and like in terms of like, or pressure from representation to people in charge of funding and stuff like that to like make changes to sort of like the cultural aspects in the script because they're not, marketable enough. And, sometimes I feel like some things, it's always a judgment call, right? Some things you can change, but most of it you can't, and you should like be vocal about it. And in the same way, when I was in film school in New York, I would get I would write a script to shoot it in like I don't know, Harlem or something, like where I lived, and they'd be like, "But this is in English. You're from Puerto Rico," and I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Okay." Don't you want to like lean more on that? And I'm like, well, are you gonna pay for it for me to go to Puerto Rico? So it all comes down to like what your vision is, and knowing when to stick to your guns and when to like find like compromise, or so that's it.
Yeah, I think when my feature, like 4 years ago, that had French elements was being, in distribution talks, there was this conversation around like, oh, people don't like to read subtitles. I think that's over. I think K-drama has completely transformed that, honestly. Like, everyone's reading subtitles, and so make films in different languages. Like, it doesn't...
I love subtitles.
Yeah, they're just... We have them on anyway, even if they're speaking the language, and I think, I don't know, that's silly. I think, yeah, even in that was just 4 years ago, and I just don't hear people saying that anymore. Within Vietnamese community, I'll say, like, I get really caught up in the details. This is more to your previous question, but because, how much Vietnamese versus English does this person speak, and why? And do they speak with a northern dialect, a southern dialect, or a central region dialect? And, like, what language do they speak? Like, when does that mean did they leave before the war, during the war, after the war? There's all these details you get so caught up in with who's speaking what language and how they speak it. And I just got to a point when I was trying to write this kind of Vietnamese community story where I just realized I had to let go of the specifics of history to a certain degree to like be creatively free and just not get too caught up, in those details, which can be suffocating.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, French and Vietnamese, but even like the 3 versions of Spanish that we have are also completely different versions of Spanish. And so I would love if each of y'all could elaborate a little bit on writing in a specific language or a specific version of Spanish or Spanglish, and how you're using that as potentially an intentional act to preserve some of your cultural identity.
All right. So, again, I bring you all to the mountains of Puerto Rico again. So, anyways, where I'm going with this is that there's a very specific kind of Spanish spoken. There's an island, after all. So, for instance, we don't finish our words sometimes. Like, do you pronounce your R's? I mean, we really
sometimes, but not really.
Yeah,
the S. Our problems are the S. The S at the end of the word. We don't pronounce it.
Yeah, us neither. The S or the R or the N, like we just don't. So a lot of the time, you do want to preserve that. You want to bring that into your script. A lot of like sayings as well, like sayings like that contain like wisdom and stuff. That people say, and like there's a lot of that. And so there comes a moment there where it's all about like balance, right? How much you want to bring that into your film. I feel like when I'm watching like a film from Puerto Rico, sometimes the actors speak perfect Spanish, and it just like brings me out of it. So I hear those N's, those R's, those S's, and I'm like, and I gotta lean in and try to like focus and try to get into it. And the opposite is true. Sometimes I see like films that they lean a little bit too much on it, and like I'm like, all right, I see what you're doing. So I think that is very specific to the individual, to the viewer, to the creator. Just how much you're willing to lean into it. And I guess most of the time, I think a really good way to go about it is to like focus on the people, right? Would this person on this script, like, you know, like say something like this? Would they say it like this? Or maybe this other person, maybe they weren't raised in the mountains here, so maybe they speak a little bit different. So I feel like rooting it in people, in characters, maybe like a really good way to circumvent that problem.
Which actually brings me to something really interesting that we have in the Spanish language, which is called neutral accent. Within the Spanish languages, we all have like different accents because we live in different countries, of course. So there's this idea that we need to all speak one certain way, one certain accent, which sometimes to me is also like complicated to understand because I love the multiculturality. I don't know if that's a word, but the diversity of accents. And I would love to watch a film, even if it's a full Spanish speaking language film, with different accents, you know, in my language. And I feel that's, that's different from languages, but at the same time it's like, you know, accents and diversity.
Yeah, I think, like, for me, preserved from Bolivian specifically, it's a lot of just made-up words and sayings and sounds, you know, that I try to include, and I'll write them out. Like, when I was trying to do the subtitles, which I did myself for Juana Pelos, there's this part where, like, the older sister catches the younger one trying to, like, pluck her mustache, and she, like, hurts herself, and she, like, lowers a hand and goes, "Uta," you know? And everybody's like, how do you translate uta? And I'm like, uta is a feeling, you know? You can't translate uta, you know? So stuff like that. Or even words like, I don't know, that we have that I don't know if they exist anywhere else. Do you guys use alaraca?
I don't know
Yeah,
what that means.
No seas alaraca. And alaraca is something that you call somebody when they're scared of pain in any way, like scared of physical pain, they don't want to do it. Or scared of jumping in the pool. It's like, ay, no seas alaraca, you know? And I like using that one a lot, but I think we made it up, you know? I don't think any other culture uses that, yeah, so stuff like that.
Marion, I know you spoke to this a little bit when you were talking about Vietnamese, but I don't know if there's anything you want to add. You also started talking a little bit about subtitles, and not specifically talking about subtitles, but I would love to hear about a time when you wrote something very specifically knowing that the audience that was going to receive it wasn't going to speak that language. So writing something in Spanish, knowing that you're primarily going to send it to US festivals and it will be probably a largely English-speaking audience, or French, or doing it in English and wanting it to be seen in France, or, you know, whatever version of this. But yeah, if y'all could speak to that a little bit.
That happens to me all the time because I work in Spanish and I always submit mostly to US festivals. But I'm gonna pick up on your example because it's really funny when I made this film that I'm screening tomorrow. It's a world premiere, by the way. Thank you. Thank you to the New Orleans Film Festival. So there was this line that one actor said, and it was improv, and she said Solaris, which made reference to the Tarkovsky film, but she was actually referring to the sun. It's sol, you know, sun, sol. And I was like, how do I translate this without, like, I really love the Solaris idea, you know, but how do I translate that? And it was one of those moments where I'm like, what do I do? And I started asking a lot of like English-speaking people, and I was like, what do I do? I don't even know what I did. I don't remember anymore. But come tomorrow at 4 p.m. Britannia Theater to see what I did.
Yeah, plug it.
Let's find the answer to that question.
with subtitles, yes. Yeah.
I don't design the program guide, so I'm not sure. All good.
I'll say that I've started doing my own subtitles. I do them on Premiere now so that I can because I have so many corrections that I want to make when I get the file that I'm basically redoing like 80% of it anyway. And it's always, the complicated things of what is, I feel like I'm cursing so much in this, but I have a film called Rosalía, Las Hijas de Rosalía, and in it, the mom, which like my mom uses the word joder a lot, which means something different depending on how you're saying it, right? So she talks to her daughters and she's like, dejen de joder, or then she calls one, no seas jodida, or no me jodas, and all those translate to absolutely different things. It's like a word that we use in different ways, and I'm like, don't be a pain. I don't know, trying to find it. So for things like that, I end up like using my own to find the closest approximation in English.
What was the question?
If you've written something knowing that in one language, knowing that the audience that was going to receive it was going to not speak that language or speak a completely different language.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm here. That's the film that I wrote and directed, screening today at 5 p.m. Like I said, it's Entre Tormentas. It's in Spanish, and so I intentionally did it like that to submit to the U.S. and international film festivals, and I do that under the belief that I'm a writer director. I want to speak about the stuff that I care about, and the things that I know, and I believe that I hope that I'm showing viewers in the U.S. and internationally something that they haven't seen before, and that they might find that interesting. And also get funding, and in the process contribute towards putting my grain of salt, I don't know, towards strengthening the Puerto Rican identity in film, so it goes both ways, everybody wins.
Yeah, I think everybody does win, and that's the best part of, I think the idea that there's different perspectives watching the same thing and taking away different things, is the point of movies and cinema. And so, when you have a multicultural audience and some people can grasp some things and for other people it's eye-opening, I think that's really beautiful. And I also think, as a writer, again, getting caught up in how people are saying things I've found can be very, can be a struggle. And I recently read Murakami just talking about writing and how, when he started, the first time he decided to write in English, how much easier it was. He was forced to just stay on track with what he's trying to say. He couldn't do all the fluff that he was doing in Japanese. He had to stay, to the point and to the essence of what he's writing. What's the core of what this person is saying, not how they're saying it, and leaving that up to the actor, almost. And I think that's a very emboldening part of thinking of writing in different languages.
I love Murakami, so I love that you brought that up. But I completely agree. I'm not going to get lost in that right now. At this point, I do want to open it up to the audience for questions. We have a microphone that's going around the room, so if you want to raise your hand, the microphone will come to you.
Hello. Hello. Hola. I have two questions about code switching, because I love code switching when I'm writing my films, as in bouncing back and forth between characters who don't speak the same language, who or kind of speak the same language. You spoke to how you make those choices, but I'm curious what kind of fun you've explored doing that in your own work. And then 2, who do you lean on in your life or otherwise for, like, I will text my mom about translating Spanish, right? But then I'll also text, if I'm writing Spanish that's spoken by a Mexican, she's Puerto Rican, I'll text a different friend. And I'll just go back and forth between them trying to figure out, do you all lean on people in your lives for that kind of thing?
Oh, it's for me? Okay. I never heard that term before. Code switching. So like 2 people that speak different languages in the same room, like trying to communicate?
Or they know some of the same language, but one person starts in Spanish and switches to English, then back and forth.
Gotcha. I do have that actually. I just didn't have, it's very fun. Cause it's like, I don't know, it opens a third language basically between like, you know, cause then it forces you to come face to face with subtext as well, with the gestures, with like physical language as well. And I'm exploring that right now in my, the script and development, the one like Puerto Rico and the mountains and gentrification and stuff. So there's a lot of like, you know, people speaking one Spanish, one English, just trying to communicate with each other. And, you know, they each hold parts of the puzzle, but not the overall, like the whole thing. And then to answer your second question, yeah, I mean, you meet people in, you know, in your walks of life, and you have your, like, you have your inner circle, I have mine, you know, I have some people that you know, there's this filmmaker in Puerto Rico, it's a close friend of mine, and I send him my scripts after I translate them to Spanish in the end. I usually write them in English, draw multiple drafts, and then I translate them to Spanish and I share it with him, and I'm like, where am I leaning? Am I going too hard? Am I leaning too back? Like, and he usually, it's my backup, my cornerstone for dialogue, for dialects and stuff like that, and yeah.
Does anyone else want to add anything when it comes to that?
I just want to answer the second question because I want to shout out my friend Sol Canal. I have a friend who came to the United States when she was 2 years old. So her primary language it's super weird because she speaks both Spanish and English, and it's hard to say what's her first language is. And she's the first one who always reads my scripts, see the translations of my films. Like, she's the one for everything.
Any other audience questions?
Great panel, good job, you guys. I was wondering, can you hear me? Okay. What are like non-negotiables and things that you compromise on, especially in terms of casting and building your crew with like seeing your vision, for example, like Maria, like you're Bolivian, but you're in Texas, so there's more Mexican heritage around you, and like how important is it that you surround yourself with people that like you identify with, and like actors that like maybe Bolivian, but maybe are not accessible in terms of like independent filmmaking, like what's tangible, what's accessible, how do you market, like what's important to you, all of you?
I'll start. I think that for me in casting, when I look for Spanish speakers, but I don't actually care that much about like where they're from, as long as they are true to the part. There's actually like a few Bolivian actors that I really want to work with, but they've auditioned for me and I'm like, oh, this other person is better, you know? It fits the role better, even if she's not Bolivian, so I've given it to her because it was just more suited. So for me, I think it's like character first. I love having bilingual people, not necessarily just bilingual, but just people with international backgrounds on my set, because it adds so much texture and culture. For me, particularly South American, having South American people on my set brings so much value, because even though the Latino community is beautiful, it's incredible, like Caribbean Latinos are very different than South American Latinos. Very different. And I've experienced, and they're different than Mexicans, and you can feel that. And like, I'm being from Bolivia, being from La Paz, I'm like from the Andes. I'm a mountain Latina. I grew up in turtlenecks and shoes and socks. Like, I was cold. So it's a different experience, And I think that, like on my last project, I was really fortunate to have like Colombians, Argentinians, Venezuelans in my set, and it just made it so much richer. So I welcome it. I don't necessarily. I wouldn't call it a non-negotiable, but if it's an option to have more Latinos surrounding me when I'm doing my work, especially Spanish speakers, I'm all for it.
Yes, I do. For me, it's it's very important for me to find, if I'm shooting in Puerto Rico, like Puerto Rican actors, just because of. Like you said, the Spanish is very specific. So that's extremely important for me. And I actually like meet with the actors. I speak for a long time, like just hanging out, just speaking. In the back of my head, I'm like, okay, and just just trying to. And then like I record the auditions and stuff like that. I rewatch them. I see like Czech dialect and all that stuff. Those are things that are always in my head. And then. Behind the camera, there are roles that are I strongly feel like they should be like local, and others that I'm like, like for instance, for me, for short film that I have here, and the next one, and the one before that, it's very important to me that roles like production designer, an assistant director. Those are Puerto Rican, that they know the lay of the land, that they know the culture, and then other things I intentionally like to not have someone in Puerto Rico, like actually a director of photography. So I like to have someone just, it could be Latino or American, but not necessarily from Puerto Rico. And then I get to see things, I get to rediscover Puerto Rico through their eyes. And that's very interesting for me because it calls attention to things that you just, you forget they're there because they've always been there. So yeah, so it really, that's always in the back of my head. Like who, depending on the role, who should this person be? Like where are they from and stuff like that. And also, who are they, as individuals. So.
That's really beautiful. Is there anything that you, Hansel, Marion, you want to add to that question?
I would add that as far as actors goes, I mean, I know of directors who have directed actors whose language they don't speak, and I haven't done that yet. Like I think I need to be able to understand an actor and vice versa. I just think that there's this code of trust and safety that between actors and directors, depending what you're shooting, but that requires you to speak the same language. Otherwise, things can go really wrong. As far as vulnerability and also as a director, being able to learn from that person. If I'm working with someone from a different culture, I need at least a bit of access. But I think, having as many people from different cultures on the same set is really special and worth pursuing.
Are there any other audience questions?
Hi, Erica and I work together. We have a company called Cafecito Productions. Many of our projects have been bilingual. We both grew up speaking Spanglish a whole lot. I'm curious, kind of off of what you said earlier, Marion, about when you choose not to subtitle something. We often reference the Coco model of being able to contextualize something within the primary language that's being spoken, and often we've made a choice to not put in the subtitle for the bit of Spanglish that's going on. And I'm just curious, for those of you who've worked bilingually in film, how you approach that choice, especially I'm considering from an accessibility model these days.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll try to make it more succinct. Just how you choose, I guess it's, if you ever choose not to subtitle something because it's an emotion or it's a word that just doesn't exist in English, or it's just not going to give it the same effect.
That would be interesting. I want to do it now. Like a whole. Thank you.
I noticed, actually, that reminds me of the end of your film, I noticed. It's hard because when you're subtitling something in a different language, but then you're also asking for captions, right? The audience is getting both dialogue and then like foil crunches in the back of the car or whatever in the same, you know, information systems. And it can really kill a mood. And I mean, that's a good question. I think I think very carefully when I'm asked to do open captions for subtitled films, like what is truly necessary for this person, for someone who cannot hear, to what is necessary for them to experience it, and what can we just, it doesn't matter that there are strings playing pizzicato in the soundtrack, you know? Yeah.
I think it's a creative tool. I think it, I mean, I remember when I subtitled like my first, you know, the first project I had to subtitle, I was like, that's easy. And then when you sit down and you're like, oh, that's why there are people that like work on this, you know, this is a whole world. And I think it's, you know, like everything, you gotta evaluate it on a case-by-case basis, you know, like for scenes, for moments, like what do you wanna, and rooted in story, of course, like what, you know, cause you gotta caption the necessary things so people like viewers understand the story. And maybe you know, there are things that maybe you want to not caption, and actually they work better creatively that they're not captioned. Like maybe just like sounds remaining as sounds can be just as powerful, if not more, than something that is just, you know, being captioned. So I don't know. It's just moment by moment, you know, feel it out and see what works, and test it with people that you trust, of course. And strangers as well, like new people. So I don't know, those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'd love to see the scenarios where you're describing this, because I understand the value, like, of just the emotional experience, but I have a lot of fear that people in my audience are going to feel like they're being cheated out of something being communicated. So I usually I don't want them to be taken out of the experience because there's something being said that they don't understand, or if they're sitting in a room with people that do understand it, you know, and they're left with the experience. Because even though that moment is really valuable, you know, I know what you're saying, like that, the visceral experience, the body language, my fear is that they won't be there because they'll be in their head thinking of what they can't hear. So I try to translate everything. Even like, ooh, that I was talking about earlier. I'm like, ta. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, like, that's what it is, yeah.
I try to do the same. I try to do the whole thing. And sometimes it's difficult because I'm watching the film and I don't want to have all that information because I know what it's about, but I think it's information that the audience sometimes needs. But I love what you were saying about being a creative choice and something that it can serve the film also as creatively, you know.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. We're gonna have to wrap it up. Thank you all so much.
But if you have any questions and you didn't ask her, you can come and see us.
Yeah, we can we have time before the next panel. We just, yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you all so much
Thank
for
you.
doing this.
Thank you
all
for hosting
being
this,
here.
Jillian. So fun.
Thank you, Jillian.